All right. So, hi. Welcome to this new Artuya live workshop. I hope everyone is doing great given the actual context. Maybe for some of you, it's the occasion to make some music. Maybe you don't feel the inspiration to make some music and don't feel guilty about it. That's normal. But yes, maybe with this workshop, I try to give you some inspiration and make you want me to make some music. If I do, that would be cool. So that's great. So yes, first I'm gonna introduce myself. So my name is Baptiste Le Goff, and I'm working as a product manager for Arturia since 2 years and a half now, and I started back in the days 5 years ago as a software developer. So I transitioned to being a software developer on the vCollection plugins to being a product manager on the vCollection. And basically what I do, my job is to define the new products that are gonna be part of the next vCollection iteration each time. And I also make some music in my spare time, and actually I wanted to combine both topics to create this workshop today. And the main topic of this project is to present you a track I've been making last week to prepare this workshop, but also as a track for my own project. And I'm using vCollection instrument in this track, and we will see how it's how I prepared this track, or I made the different elements of the track with the vCollection. And more globally, the idea is to also give you an idea of how vCollection instrument can be used in the modern sounding productions. All right. Okay, so let me switch to my computer screen so you can see my screen. All right, so first what I want to present is that we're going to see a bit how a vCollection instrument is structured, so we can share all the knowledge about that, and then we will see how this structure makes sense in modern productions. And then I'll dive into the track I prepared, and we will analyze the different components that compose the track. And after that, I will answering the question you may have. So if you have questions during this live stream, please post your question inside the chat on either YouTube or Facebook, depending on the platform you're using. And either the team will answer your question directly in the chat, or I will answer some of them at the end of this workshop. Okay, so first we're gonna dive into the collection instrument. This one is the Mini V from Arturia vCollection. So the vCollection is, just to sum up a bit for people who are not familiar with it, the vCollection is a collection of 23 vintage recreation of keyboard instruments, and also composed of Analog Lab, which is kind of the plugin where you will find all the presets of all of the plugins inside just a single place. If you want more info about Analog Lab, my colleague Pierre did a workshop, I think 2 weeks ago about it. So if you want to go in detail, you can watch that again. And the presentation of the different vCollection instrument has been done by my colleague Jeff, so I won't cover that in details. I invite you guys and girls to check Jeff's presentation if you want to see that in detail. Okay, so what I want to show you here is the basic structure of the vCollection instruments. So first, we arrive on this view if we open the Mini V, which is, by the way, the recreation of the famous Minimoog synthesizer, one of the most legendary synthesizers of all times. And yes, basically we reproduce the main panel, so you have the original controls, a few additions here, but not that much. We try to we try to be respectful to the original instrument layout and feature set, so people that are familiar with the original can directly use it. And then after this, in addition to this hardware panel, we have here, if I click here, we have an advanced panel, which is basically a screen which is not present in the original instruments, where we added lots of additional features to the original instrument. So, for example, if here I'm in this tab, which is the tab where are hosted an additional LFO, as well as an added arpeggiator. So, for example, I can play some arpeggio. Sorry, it's a bit loud. I can play some arpeggios on the Mini-V, which is not feature, which is available on the original machine. Then, as well, here you have motion recorder, which is a way to draw some shapes and assign this shape as modulations to different parameters. So, for example, here I will modulate the cutoff frequency of the filter. Oh, sorry, I need to deactivate the arpeggiator. Okay, so now you hear the sound evolving by itself, which is as well also not present in the original instrument, but the software side of it makes it easy for us to add some stuff like that. Then you have some modulation assignment that can be done here. And on each one of our plugins, you will find in the advanced section an effect tab. So you can these are additional effects that are really great, because when you make some presets, you can include directly some effects from inside the instruments, and then you can find your preset across different projects you may have in your DAW with this effect integrated. So it allows to do some processing that would require on the original to have maybe several effect racks or pedals that you would use for that. So yeah, this is great. I mean, this is great addition to the original, the effects, and what I shown before. And what I want to say as well, presenting the instrument here, is that given the fact that you have all these advanced possibilities like the modulations, the effects integrated, this is really suitable for modern production. We gone way beyond the original machine here, and we integrated features that you found in the most recent VSTs you may encounter. So that's really relevant to modern production. In every V-Collection instrument, you will find ways to really modern sound, although it's emulating vintage keyboard instruments. And last one on that is that the fact that these are vintage instruments is really great, because for some of them they've been around since 40 or 50 years now, and these have been tools that have been used with a broad range of different artists from several genres. But now you have these tools at your disposal with a modern twist, which is really great. And last thing I want to show you here, sorry, I said last thing before that, but this is the real last, is that if I click here on this button, I can open the preset browser of the instruments. And in this preset browser, we will find the list of all the different available presets. So here you can see that we have 556 presets in this VST, and yeah, I mean, that's a lot of sound to explore, but sometimes it can be a bit difficult to find your sound in all of these different presets. So one cool thing about the preset browser here is that you can filter the presets by different kind of filter. So for example, here I can choose to select only the bass sounds, and now you see that we are 93 presets that correspond to bass sounds. So let's try one of two of them. Okay, seems pretty bassy to me, and if that's too much sounds to explore as well, we can narrow a bit the search and select another filter here. So for example, acid in the styles. So now I have all the presets that are tagged with bass and acid sounds, and that's only 9 presets now. And if I hear, if I listen to one of them, yeah, the classic acid 303 kind of sound. Okay, so that's it for the presentation of the V collection instrument, and I wanted to refresh a bit the context about it, so you can better understand what we're speaking about in the next section. So I'm gonna close this one and deactivate it because I don't need it in the track. And then, okay, so I'm gonna explain you the concept of what I'm gonna present here. So this is a track I've been working on, as I said, for the sake of this presentation. And I'm using Ableton Live, as you can see, and I'm using the session view in Ableton Live, which allows you to make some loops run together without having to write things down in the arrangement style you can find in overdose like Pro Tools, Logic, Cubase, or whatever. Just it's more practical to me here to present you that way because I don't have to play stuff all over again. And that's also the way I create my stuff, my music. I mean, that's a great way to sketch some ideas before bouncing the track in arrangement view and make it in some way frozen. Okay, so first we're gonna go through the track, and so you can have an overview on what we're gonna work on. So let's go. Okay, so that's what we're gonna be doing today in this workshop. We're gonna analyze how I made these different sections, and yeah, I hope it will be interesting on your side. Okay, so just to present as well some things and make something clearer, the drums I've been making them using samples, and then all the other instruments are basically V collection instruments. So I used 8 instruments, V collection instruments to do that. Okay, so we're gonna run each section by section and analyze what elements are composing this section. Okay, so let's just listen to the first one. Alright, so in this first section, which is kind of the basis, the foundation of the track, there are several ambient purposed components. Three of them, including the first one, is a Prophet V, which uses a Prophet VS engine. And basically what I did here is just that I browsed sound like we saw before, and I found a sound which I found really interesting, which is this one, octave lower, which is interesting because by playing a little chord on my keyboard here, I have a sound that is a bit evolving, so it's kind of a sequence, but it's a more modulated sound with some noise on top, so it's already moving, and just by playing some notes I have evolving sound like that. And this sound is used to indicate the end of the phrases, so it's like a drum break at the end of a phrase. When it starts over, it indicates the new cycle start after that. Okay, and then after the next one is the same V, so here same idea. I'm gonna activate on my MIDI controller the fact that I can play a chord with just one keyboard note, because I'm a terrible keyboard player. So it's normal if you see my keyboard playing just one note and hear several notes at the same time. So here in this it's same V, and I use it to create a kind of pad in the style of UK. I don't know, dark dubstep or whatever, all the school stuff that I kind of like, and that's actually a preset I found as well in the preset browser here. So let's hear it. Sorry. Okay, so nice pad to set kind of the mood. And the other element, the next one and the last one of this section, is kind of the same spirit element. It's as well a pad. But I like to differentiate a bit the sound when I'm using this kind of sound, and having two sounds of the same type and same sonic texture, I'd say, is interesting to vary a bit the sounding of your track. All right, so let's hear it again. Okay, so now that we have our foundation, I will use the same elements, and we will add another plugin, which is the DX7V. Let's listen to this new section. Okay, so now you can hear the sequence that is being played by the DX7V here. While the track sounded quite maybe a bit empty at the beginning in the section we saw before, now it's starting to be really interesting, because we have an element that is here on each and every note, so it's kind of filling the space, and it's nice. Okay, so let's listen to the DX7V sound only here. Alright, so what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna start from scratch, and we're gonna try to match this kind of sound by doing presets from scratch. So I'm loading a new preset, and you can hear, let me deactivate the chord mode. So yeah, this new preset it's the start of what we're gonna do. Just a bit of summing up a bit for those of you who are not familiar with this plugin. The DX7 is based on the synthesis technique, which is called frequency modulation synthesis. And the principle of that is that you have several, let's say, oscillator for the sake of the presentation, and you can modulate the pitch of one oscillator by the output of the other of another oscillator. So it might seem a bit complex. So let's just hear how it sounds. So here we have the 6, let's say, oscillator of the instrument, and if I'm gonna modulate the frequency of oscillator 1 by oscillator 2 by doing this. Okay, so which is cool as well is that you can see here on the right that we have a visualizer on oscilloscope for the sound, for the output sound of the synthesizer. So it's really interesting to look at that when you are doing patches, because you can visualize what's happening inside the synthesizer. And yes, when I basically apply frequency modulation by moving the slider here, you see that the sound is moving from a basic sine wave like this to a more complex sound. Okay, so now that we've seen the basic principle of the synthesizer, we're gonna dig right into the modulation page. And in the modulation page, we can see that we have different modulation sources, 2 LFOs, for example. You have as well the modulation dedicated envelopes. And we have our interesting part is for this preset is the sequencer here. So basically what I can do is I can draw some steps here with values between -1 and 1. And yeah, just create some sequence like that. But yes, if I play, we don't hear the sequencer doing anything right now. That's because we need to assign it in the modulation matrix. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna select sequencer as a source, and we're gonna modulate the frequency modulation amount, or the operator 2 level here with the sequencer, and let's hear how it sounds. Okay, so it's starting to get interesting. We are hearing the modulation getting applied and the sound evolving over time with the sequencer. One thing I wanted to say as well, which is quite interesting, at least that's something I use in my production to work quickly, is that little dice button here, which basically allows you to generate random sequences in the sequencer. Okay, and yes, when you when you start to have something interesting using this button, you can still edit some steps if you want by hand. Yeah. So the sound is evolving over time, but we're kind of missing the original, the preset we saw before, which is really glitchy and going in high frequency sometimes. To do that, we're gonna modulate the operator 2, so oscillator 2 frequency by doing selecting operator 2 pitch and frequency in the modulation destinations, and then applying the sequencer to this as well. Okay, so now I know you techno fans, if there is some of you in the viewers are kind of getting interested, it's basically a quick way to do techno sequences quickly. Yes, so next what I'm gonna show you is that now we are using 8-step, as you can see here in the sequencer, and it's interesting already, but there is a way to make it even more interesting. So what I want to show you is that we are gonna activate the metronome here, and by playing over the metronome, let's hear how the sound repeats. Okay, so you've heard that the sound is looping over two times. of the bar, which is pretty narrow, and it's kind of too short to be maybe interesting, and maybe we can do something even a bit better. So what I'm gonna do here is that I'm gonna change the number of steps of the sequence from 8 to 9, and now 9, which is not a subdivision of which is not a multiple of 4, which is the basis of the track, because the time signature is 4/4. The whole sequence will shift over different times of the bar or the metronome playing. So let's hear it. Sorry, no metronome playing. Okay, so I hope you've heard the difference. Now it's not the same loop over again. It's kind of evolving on its own. It's kind of what is used as well on, for example, our products like Drum Brute and Drum Brute Impact, or Keystep Pro, I think, which is the polyphonic feature, which allows you to set different lengths of sequences to create more evolving sequences as a whole for the whole instrument. Alright, so now we have our sequence running 9 steps, which is kind of sounding nice. But let's go even, let's do even more on this preset. So the next thing I want to show you is that we have, as I said before at the beginning, we have an effect section embedded in the software, and we're going to apply these effects, some effects to the preset to make it sound more like a modern-ish sound, and you will see how it is interesting to do that. So I'm going to apply an overdrive because it's a kind of a techno-ish sequence, so I mean, we need some saturation here. Okay, cool. And then we're gonna increase the stereo spectrum, stereo image of the sound by applying a chorus here. Okay, sounding pretty nasty. And lastly, I'm gonna add a little bit of reverb so we can have a little feel of a room with this. Alright, you can add a kick and a hat to that, and you have a Detroit techno track. Okay, so that's it for the preset. I'm gonna revert to the original preset I designed because I spent time doing that, and I don't want to run into some weird stuff. So let's hear back this section we've worked on here. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So same basis as the foundation is still here. So Prophet V, Sam, and Synclavier ambient elements are still here, and now we have a new synthesizer here, which is the CS80, which is playing some arpeggios. Which is pretty nice. Same as the sound as before. That's the sound I found in the while browsing presets in the preset browser. So it's called E-Invaders, and you can find it in the original instrument as well. Same as the preset I showed before on Prophet, Sam, and Synclavier. By the way, you can find this preset directly in the softwares. Alright, so nothing much to say on that. Let's move to the next one. Okay, so you may have noticed we have a new drum element here that came. I added actually, yes, some breaks like that. Yes, so I added that to the main drum, so it creates an impression of more content and more elements building the track. So the new element, key synth element here is CZV, and it's a patch I've done for the sake of this presentation, but I won't go through all the details here because otherwise I won't have time to show you the next preset which I prepared as well, which is more interesting, I think. Just wanted to say that the CZV is a great product to make pad as well, and it's pretty easy to use. So I invite you guys to check it out if you are interested to make some kind of lo-fi pads or something like that. Let's just hear how it sounds. Okay, and one thing I want to mention here as well is that I use a technique here which is called sidechain compression, and what it does is that when the kick of the drums, the kick drum is playing, it will basically cut the volume of the CZV. So it creates an impression of a rhythmical element happening, although the instrument is just holding notes. So let's hear it. So yes, the kind of new note you are hearing is that because the kick of the kick drum is playing and side chaining the compressor on the CZV track. So let's hear maybe both together. Okay, I think that's it for this section. Yes, and then we're reaching the what I would call the cool down section of the track, or where we're gonna start to make some free space and let the people from the audience cool down a bit before we bring the climax of the track, which is the kind of what's maybe called the drop, or the main part of the track. So let's hear the cool down section here. Alright, so here I got rid of the three basic ambient element, the foundation of the track, the Prophet, Sam, and Synclavier. I also removed the breaks from the drums I introduced before. And then we kept a kind of pad on the CZV we showed just before, but a bit more free of notes, just hitting the first time of the bar. And because, yes, I didn't mention it before, but I kind of hope to have made a Detroit Electro, kind of inspired track, and the two new elements here are kind of characteristic to me on this style. So I introduce a voice here, which is kind of a robotic voice, which is actually a sample I've taken from a video game called Half-Life, and that I processed, as you can see, quite a bit. So it has a robotic feel. And the new synth here is the Mini V, which is doing, let's hear it, which is doing this kind of sound. And maybe for some of you, oh sorry. maybe for some of you, you have kind of already heard these kind of sounds, and that's the kind of sound that's has been, I think, used quite a lot in electro, Detroit Electro, or maybe industrial electro or something like that. It's pretty basic, as you will see. I will show you how to make this kind of sounds. And yes, what I wanted to say as well is that for those of you who know the artist Daniel Avery, that's kind of sound he uses a lot in, for example, in his album Drone Logic. I invite you to check that out, because that's I really love this album and this artist, and that's kind of what inspired this preset here. So okay. Let's first analyze all the preset sounds, and then I'm going to get started from scratch to explain how to do it. So first, you will notice that I'm playing only one note here on the keyboard. And you kind of hear in different notes. Actually, that's not different notes. That's the filter getting modulated by the velocity of the key. And since the mini V filter has a property which is called auto oscillation, it means that the resonance can go really high and can emphasize a lot, really dramatically bend in the spectrum, which creates the impression of playing a note. But the real stuff here is that I'm just playing a D here on my keyboard, and that's always be a D to the here, but the timbre is affected by the modulation on the cutoff. That's why you hear this kind of different note or timbre modulations. So yeah, that's how it works. So now I'm gonna start from scratch here. Okay, so how it's done is let's first activate all the oscillators. Okay, so as I said, the filter here, resonance is the key element of this patch. Yes, so by just increasing that, we kind of getting already closer to the sound, but we need to do a few tweaks after that. So this parameter here is the amount of envelope which is applied to the filter, which is also something very important to do this preset. So let's hear it how it affects the sound. So you hear that the sound is getting modulated down, because the decay time here of the envelope is not 0. Let's increase it a bit so you hear more how it sounds. Okay, but for our preset, we're gonna keep the decay time quite low, and the amount of contour which can go really high. The amount of contour being the filter envelope amount. We're gonna keep it quite low because we don't want to go too high for the preset. And the last thing we need to do is go to the advanced section and assign the velocity as a source to the destination, which is the cutoff. So let's do that here, selecting the velocity as the source of the modulation and the cutoff as the destination, and increasing the amount here. And since we are now modulating the cutoff with the velocity, I'm gonna close the cutoff frequency to 0 here on the instrument. So when I play low velocity notes, it's gonna be really close to the filter getting close or at 0, and when I play at maximum, it will basically go up. So let's hear it. Okay, so yeah, that's about it. Let's do one more thing here. Because this is a software modeling and it's not the original hardware, we are not limited by the hardware possibilities of the instrument. And what we can do here is apply something called unison, which basically is a way to stack different voices of the instruments all together, playing the same note. And we can detune a bit these different voices, and this creates the impression of a fatter sound and warmer sound. So I'm going to apply here the polyphony, which is going to be the number of voices which will get stacked together. For the unison, I'm going to set it to 4 voices, and I'm going to detune a bit the different voices so we can hear so we can hear a richer sound. So let's hear it. Maybe it's too much. Let's try with 2 voices. Okay, so that's without unison. And yeah, for you to hear it better, I'm gonna increase the number of voices. So this is without unison. And this is with. Okay, that's it for this preset. Same as before, I'm gonna revert on this one because I spent a lot of time doing fine-tuning it, so we need to keep it clear. All right, and so let's hear back the cooldown section here of what we've done. Sorry, need to unsolo things. Actually, I'm gonna transition from the cooldown section to the climax so you can hear the energy going up. So let's go. Okay, so here we are getting back the Prophet V track that we had at the beginning. We're also getting back the breaks that I introduced before the cooldown. And we are getting the CZV pad, but which is playing higher in pitch, an octave above to what we had before, which is great to create some more energy moving kind of, bringing up the energy with that. Let's hear it. Okay, and we have a new the voice as well, which is not the same one as before, but same spirit. Biohazard detected. And we still have the mini V, the Electro Daniel Avery-ish notes that we just saw before. But one thing I want to show you as well to increase the energy on this patch is that one cool thing with this instrument is, and that's an original feature actually, is that you can modulate the frequency just as we did with DX7V, the frequency of the first oscillator and the second oscillator by the third oscillator. But you can also modulate the cutoff frequency with the third oscillator here. And so I've activated the filter modulation switch here. And when I'm gonna increase the mode, the mod wheel, you will hear that the sound which become a bit more fuzzy, a bit nastier, which is kind of great to bring more energy on that. So let's hear it. So increasing now. That's without modulation and with modulation. Okay. And yes, I think that's it. I also have Dix 7V here element, just which is kind of, oh sorry, it's open on the wrong screen. It's basically just an impulse going into the effects, so that's a nice way as well to use the inside the included effect section in the instrument. So if I deactivate all the effects, you will hear that the sound is pretty basic. It's just basic FM with two operators or oscillators with an envelope for modulating the first operator with the second one. So it's quite basic. But when we add some effects, for example, a chorus, now the sound is more wide, stereo speaking, a little bit of compression, and a reverb, and a delay. I don't think the delay was here on the. Oh yeah, maybe yes. So yes, just from the effects section, you can create some really interesting stuff. I think that's it. I'm gonna now switch to my other screen so I can see the question you may have asked in the chat, and I'll try to answer them as the best as I can. So Q1, what that's fluidity sound coming from the CS80 instance? That's actually something I presented during the third section of the track. That's a preset called E-invaders that you can find in the CS80 software. And I invite you to try it yourself. So next question. Can you explain the differences between using analog lab or V-collection instruments in a project? Okay, so basically what analog lab does, as explained at the beginning, is that it includes all the presets from all the instruments of V-collection, so you find all your presets in one place. And you can as well, if you own the V-collection instrument, you can open these inside the analog lab. So analog lab is kind of a hub to host the V-collection instrument preset and instruments. And if you open an instrument or if you use a preset from from analog lab, it's exactly the same as using V-collection instruments with this preset on the track. And is there an advantage to use? Is there an advantage to use analog lab instead of the individual instrument in live, for example? No, it's actually quite the same. It's the same engine running behind. The differences I might say is that some people would prefer to find some inspiration by launching analog lab and trying different presets from different instruments. And some other people might prefer to launch, let's say, Mini V because he or she wants to make some bass sounds because that's one of the strengths of the Mini V software. Okay, next question. Will we ever see an overall sequencer for V-collection and analog lab like the one in Pigments? That's a good question. Something we try to do in between different V-collection instruments is that we want to have significant differences between these instruments, so the feature set is not the same in terms of modulation in each one, and each one has its own particularity. But it could make some sense to include, for example, a sequencer in analog lab at some point, or an arpeggiator, or something like that. So yeah, good question, and we'll try to think about it next. Right. Q4, we need a vocoder from Arturia with this kind of track. Yes, I totally agree, and I'll keep that in mind, but we need a vocoder for the processing the vocals, as I did on this track. Q5, great song. What are your computer specs? So I'm running a MacBook Pro from 2017, yes, so 3 years old MacBook Pro. I think the CPU is around 3 gigahertz. And as you can see, my CPU meter in live was around 20%. And I was also running the streaming software from this computer, and I didn't hear any drop, so yes, lucky me. And next, MPE function from Pigment on all the plugins. Yes, that's something interesting. We're actually considering it for the some instruments of the V collection, and yes, good question. Thank you. Any effects on the master, and what does your FX sense look like? Oh yes. So I didn't show you this, but let me switch back to the track. On the master, I just have a limiter, so you don't hear any cracks. But it was just to catch some of the spikes that I had, and just not to seem a bit unprofessional, having some red in my master CPU view meter, but that's just to cut some peaks. And the send track is just a reverb, which, as you can see, I applied on all the tracks here, and that's something I kind of like to do to create the impression of all the elements being in the same room, which bring consistency between all the instruments, and you have the impression of some shared space between the instruments. Next question. Analog Lab uses more memory. No, because when you launch Analog Lab, if you use a preset which is a single preset, because in Analog Lab you have multi presets which use 2 engines or 2 instruments, or you have single presets, it doesn't use more memory because we load the engine of the instrument differently for any preset, and the GUI is not loaded in memory when you use Analog Lab. So maybe it would use actually less memory and sometimes because we don't have to render the 3D aspect of the instruments. Can you tell more about synthesis in CZ? It sounds very unusual. Yes, so CZV is using a type of synthesis, a synthesis method, which is called phase distortion. And what it does, I won't go into the technical details, but basically it's you define how you will read a sine table in a wave by drawing shapes, and maybe I can show you some example. And I need to go to the right track for that. Okay, so yes, so so here I'm making a patch from scratch, and first we have a sine wave, and the cool thing about this synthesizer is that you can morph from a sine wave to a different waveform by using this little control here called DCW, which means digital control waveform, which is the amount of phase distortion that is gonna be applied to this line. So that's pretty great. You can morph between the sine wave and the target wave you define here. And one cool thing as well is that you can create more complex waveform by choosing a combination of 2 different waveforms. So for example, I can use a saw and a double sine waveform. And it's not a mix of the waveform, which what is happening here. It's basically building the period of the signal being constituted of first the sawtooth and then the double sine. So it creates a more a richer sound. And then, yeah, which is really cool also about the software is that you have it's pretty simple to use, and you have dedicated envelopes on different parameters. For example, the pitch here, and the DC envelope here, which is really cool to modulate with some envelopes. So let's hear it. So that's basically how I created the pad that you saw in this presentation. And then you have two lines, so you can have more richer sound on your patch. And what I did also on the pad is that I added a bit of noise to the patch, so you have kind of richer spectrum. But if you want on the preset I created myself, if you want them, I can share them after this live stream, no problem. All right, I guess you are using an Arturia audio interface, right? Yes, that's the case. Maybe you can see it. It's the audio fuse here, which is working pretty great. So yeah. What is better to use, VST3 or your audio unit? That's a really good question, and the answer to that is VST3. At least if you use a DAW that enables VST3, because we develop our software using the VST3 SDK, which also translates our plugins in audio units and different formats. But I mean, both of VST3 and audio unit work really well, but if you want to choose between two, the VST3 might be the better solution. The last question, I don't know if somebody actually asked that, or it's a joke from people of bringing me the questions, but can we see an Arturia brass update one day? I might respond to this question by saying that that's not the kind of product I'm managing, but no, I think we don't see, but at least for the moment, we don't plan to release Arturia brass update for the moment. Yeah. Okay, I think that's it. No, there is another question. Can these accept modulation from live? For example, I'd like to bring CV in from Eurorack to modulate filter cutoff. No, that's something you cannot do, but you can route audio to some of our plugins like MiniV or Booklisol V. You can run external tracks to process them inside the plugins, but you can't route controlled signals inside the plugins yet. Can we talk a little about CMI? Yes, sure. I didn't use it here, but maybe quickly I can load it somewhere. CMI V. So the CMI is the emulation of the Fairlight CMI. CMI V is the emulation of Fairlight CMI. And yes, it's basically I think it's the first sampler. Sorry to not knowing that, but it's the first sampler that has been introduced in music as a music instrument. And yes, you can do really cool stuff with it, like sampling, but you can also do spectral synthesis. I won't dig into that too much today, but it's kind of powerful because you have 10 different slots where you can process different sounds in it, and you have an integrated sequencer. You can mix different tracks, so it's kind of a DAW from the time that you have available as a plugin in your DAW. And yes, I mean, you can create some drum sequences with this. That's not how I work usually, but that's a great tool to make some drums as well, because you get this lo-fi vibe, which is cool to have with this instrument. And maybe the best what I can do here is that I can play some presets so you can hear it. So yeah, this is a drum sequence which is programmed here, like you will find in the MIDI notes, the MIDI section, note section in Ableton or any DAW. So you can totally make some cool drum stuff in that. All right, next question. I've got limited space on my hard drive. Can I just install vCollection synths on an external drive and use as normal from that using Bitwig DAW? So you can't now, but it will be available soon. We are working on it, so it's gonna be soon possible, because we know it's important for people to be able to do that, given the fact that the newer laptops are coming with low space SSD, so we're working on that, yes. Okay, so I think that's it for the questions. I wanted to remind you that we are running a 50% off promotion on all individual vCollection instrument, Analog Lab, Pigments, and the sound banks. So I mean, if you want to do music at home, you can benefit from that, given the actual context. All right, I think that's it. So I want to thank you to attend this live workshop. I hope it's been useful, and for some of you, I hope it's been inspirational and making you make some music during these special times. And I want to just mention that on Thursday there is the next workshop with my dear colleague Brian, which is going to do a workshop on the drum brute impact, I think. Right, thank you. Bye.